Здравствуйте, я Денис Батранков, руководитель направления сетевой безопасности компании Positive Technologies. У нас в студии Иван Фомин, эксперт по информационной
In
безопасности.
our studio, we have Ivan Fomin, the expert in information security, and Andrei Balamoshnikov,
Я думаю,
the
что вы
expert in information security. I think that you will tell us about yourself.
сегодня, да, Иван Шубин, да. Соответственно, мы
Ivan Shubin.
собрались,
So today we are here together to briefly discuss the following topic. In Positive Technologies, we collect statistics on incidents that we are investigating ourselves. It's a very sad statistics because, as we have figured out, if you will calculate how many days hacker was sitting in our system before we started investigating, usually this is 200 days. Maximum that was discovered by our experts while searching, maximum it was 11 years. So, colleagues who came to us together, I have a simple question. Guys, how is it possible that hacker, even 200 days, this is an average, sometimes more, sometimes less, sits in the company and company sees nothing? What is your assumption? Why is it happening like that? Well, I think everything depends on the business the company does, because not every company will be interesting to hackers within 200 days. But the one who penetrated into network will not show himself while there is no interest. But then watching event after event, once a week, once a day, what's happening every day, trying to find information that will be useful to steal it. Well, Ivan, perhaps I will try to give you a simple answer. The problem is that the weak link in any system is a human being. And criminals, in order to simplify their penetration inside of the perimeter of the company, to get access to the victim's machine in the very beginning, or going to a certain thresholds, they try to communicate with people, first of all. The person is a weak link. And due to a number of reasons, like low education level in the area of information security or social engineering from the side of the criminals, or maybe the influence on certain, like greed or things like that, human scenes. So it's a good key to enter the system and to get a stronghold in there. But what is to be done if you understand that hacker is in the network, practically? Okay, you are security people who work in real companies. The hacker is in the network. You understand that somehow. Maybe you've read it in the news, God forbid. So we have a hacker. What usually you do about that? How do you properly react about it? How should we behave as people? You can be the first one. There could be different strategies. You can do it quickly, do the investigation, cut all the ways of injection and close this incident, or you can observe the intruder, you can see what he does, how he does it, without investigation on the official level on the data that will be acquired. Then you need to see how wide is he covering the network, and only then you should take the actions. In any case, you should do the investigation, you should do it accurately, quietly, without giving yourself up. If he was there 200 days, so he knows what he does, who does what, so you should do it accurately and carefully without, scaring him away. And answering with some humor, if the hacker is sitting in my system for 200 days, the first thing that I have to do is to buy at least antivirus. It's a basic thing that we can advise. But seriously speaking, in my life, I did have one incident in my memory. It was a long time ago when there was a confrontation with intruder in real time. We've been fighting with this intruder, and the first thing that you should start with, what is to be done? You need to find the entry point. How will you search for it? By isolating specific machine, by reading logs from that machine of that user in some system? Well, it's your question, but the basic one is to search for the entry point. Well, I think it's interesting for the people, not about specific companies, but which class of products is needed to find this entry point.
Класс. Понятно. Ну, Денис, ну от тебя такой вопрос.
Cool. Well, Denise, this question comes from you. It's a provocative question. I don't even know. Maybe some network detector, maybe it will work. But honestly speaking, one class will not be sufficient. Even network sandbox will not be sufficient because there is no continuous guarantee that your system works 100% as it's supposed to work. Another important moment you shouldn't forget from the point of view of investigation of the incidents, it's discovery. I will make an example. Airport in Tel Aviv. Forgot the name of it. Ben Gurion, yeah, Ben Gurion. The safest airport in the world. And they've been telling me the story from the security point of view in the following key. Can you imagine that Israel, from the point of view of perimeter, it's a small piece of land, 150 by 500 kilometers, and surrounded by unfriendly people, very unfriendly people. And there is an airport which will be a very important target for those unfriendly people. It's a critical infrastructure object, socially important object, but it's a very important object. However, what is important to understand, when you move towards this airport by land, you drive a very interesting snake-like road. And in the airport, there are no metal screeners, so somehow the security department knows everything about you prior to entering the airport. Why do I make this example? Is because it is obvious that in a given airport, they've built security processes in such a good way so that security department sees the anomalies. Any incident, not security, but any incident is anomaly. Therefore, if you know how to discover anomalies, it means that you can find incidents. If you can find incidents and you see the anomalies, then you perfectly know which classes of systems or which settings have to be improved in systems or tuned up in order to minimize the risk. Sorry, I will stop you. I've remembered another case, just recent one. It's Uber, Cisco intrusion. People just stole the password and login for the employee and through the VPN. And people basically, through the VPN client, get connected to the company with the login password of the employee. They had to get it around the two-factor authentication, which is also possible. So they've entered the company and then they say hello, they work on behalf of a certain employee, and they do certain actions. Do I properly understand that you mean this case in this situation, when the employee works on behalf of somebody's name, uses legal utilities, or you mean some other anomalies? Well, I've made it as a private case, but in my life there was an incident which had to be researched when one of my employees have noticed an interesting story. The person stayed after work, finishing some application in his workplace. It was evening, June, birds are flying outside of window, center of Moscow, very classy environment, no heat, and the person completes the application for the antivirus installation, routine work. Technical support employee went on vacation or transferred it in the wrong way. Another employee opens this application several times, and in one evening, antivirus is reinstalled 3 times in the same machine. Before the situation happens that on this machine is being blocked, he's being thrown away from the session, he's been thrown away from the control domain, and like understanding that enemy is here, and then you start trying to look in several directions, the entry point, where and how the victim was moving around the network, which sensors and have been compromised, where and how this victim went into the internet, and which perimeter sensors it has also shown itself in the working place, how did it work, and search for anomalies. If the employee's normal working day from 9 to 6 p.m., why do we find logins of this person at 2 in the morning? So the login is anomaly. Well, key is one necessary element, but the complex approach. Because any hacker uses vulnerabilities And first of all, you have to start by closing these vulnerabilities. You shouldn't give them a chance. Next one, you can build differently your monitoring systems and everything else. And yes, this is one of the main systems. However, nobody prohibits you to use threat intelligence, search for new compromising indicators, do the retrospective analysis. Anomalies are anomalies, but very often anomaly is just showing that something there is wrong. And big number of efforts and time are spent to get around false positives. So we have to enrich the data not only with anomalies, but also with threat intelligence and other systems. So the first one is the hygiene, the second one is the monitoring system, and the third one, yes, it is anomaly. Well, I've noticed in my projects that very often I see that I've had a presentation about 90 ways of penetrating into the network, and some people assume that there will be a vulnerability in log4j to the web or in proxy logon in Exchange what was broken. So some people think through a vulnerability or phishing that comes to your mail, and only after this intruder has to be searched for. So I want to look at it from this point of view. So we've looked at other 5 ways of penetration, like Renho, when the person is being sent to internet site. So from this point, and the example that I was making, that the person have stolen login and password and entered it. So from this point, when he just crossed the river, did you have cases like that? Is it easy to catch criminal like that? We had similar case during the past test. When first entry, remote entry, it was not considered as anomaly. Yes, it was sent improperly from the network configuration. The person was able to search in the internet what he needed, and because it's a regional office, the attack detections were not set, so he meets it. Yes, we have to think that hacker is here all the time, but hacker also should do certain actions, and sometimes these actions will betray him. And his further actions has led him to the situation that we're able to find some strange behavior. Strange behavior consisted of the fact that he went into another network when he crossed the firewall. So we will immediately to detect him, and in this segment of the regional office, he received everything that he wanted to receive, and from the transition to our segment, we have stopped him. I wouldn't say this is an anomaly, but I'd say these are standard cases, which, some deceptions, whatever you call them. And hackers, earlier or later, in order to move horizontally or to get more information, the hacker should open them or step on this mine and kill himself. But we again go through the segmentation of wall as horizontal movements. So thank you very much that you're responsible for my product. It was not the topic of today's meeting. Well, right now I would like to discuss some simple scenario, but I know that many security people started thinking when I've been discussing this with them. So the idea is that very often security people inside of the company are using there's a problem that all the people as personalities, they're using one password for state services, mail, social networks, etc., etc. And the same story to the administrators. For some reason, they manage different services, use the same login and password, and hacker breaks it to Log4j server, looks at the passwords of all the employees, and almost with 100% probability, the same login and password of admin can be applicable, hello DMZ, etc., etc. So there's a question, how can we control and how can we make administrators to do it in such a way so that inside they would check that people would have different logins and passwords, maybe goal sign-on. And these approaches to such a risk, do they exist, or do you look at those risks? Yes, we do. Well, As for the password, the first thing, from the point of view of organizational measures, please do cyber exercise on what is phishing, generation of these passwords. The second is the organizational technical measures. Nothing stops you from taking and writing a certain script which will brute force passwords for different systems, and by single bruting you'll go and try it and apply it in other systems. Plus, in addition to that, there are traditional measures and there are technical measures, and you can have the third level of instructions like motivation. The better employee goes through the training, the less he is caught on some tricks of security guys, like this script with the search for simple passwords. You can make your certain system of motivation, which can motivate this person to work better and do more complicated passwords, a lot of different passwords, etc. Well, I thought that you will speak about dual factor. Well, I wanted to speak about this as well. Long time ago, there was a Microsoft dividing accounts by levels and types, a division of hosts by levels and types, when account of the highest level cannot log in and leave their hash in machine of the lower level. So the main admin shouldn't go to the workstation service, and it happens. Nobody prohibits to give domains a certificate and prohibit them to use any login password, only to certificates. And that's what we do. We use certificates. And what Ivan said, we made a brute forcing which discovers them, and once a month we have the brute force checkup. We select weak passwords and we send messages that too bad, you have curity password and it destroys the policy, change them, and then we give them 3 days to change it. And the final thing that we do, we are trying to collect any leaked databases like Yandex, Roskomnadzor from recent ones. And through these databases, we are looking at users which look similar to ours and their emails, because as it was properly said, the password usually similar, and it leads to the successful entrance from the first time, which is difficult to manage. And this is another important element, and from the quality of this data that we get, well, efficiency of this process depends. The time has flew by fast, so I will make the result. It was really sad that you have confirmed to what I see in the world that same passwords are used by people, and I'm trying to tell these to other people. So what is to be done? I think that today, as a resume, I want all of you to say one thing that we should pay attention, especially on the security side of the guys. So what should we pay attention to? Well, I'm always saying that any protection system should be built from the basic things. Nobody have invented something new. The system has to be safe. The transfer to the system should be safe. And that's why we should start from the beginnings. We should build the hygiene, learn to control this hygiene, security hygiene, and then you will not need many of those systems. Cyber hygiene, yes. And speaking about anomalies, I will try to finish speaking about those anomalies. I think you should approach the paradigm that in a company you should have certain events which would never happen. As a consequence, you can build processes and you can tune up your systems in such a way so that these events wouldn't happen. And as a consequence, it's going to be much easier for you to discover these anomalies and detect incidents and minimize those risks. Very cool. We call it unallowable events. Thank you very much. Thanks to everyone who's been listening to us, and see you next time.